I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought at night just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Hello and welcome. It is season 33, episode 13 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. I'm Jason.
I'm Clara.
I'm Jay.
I'm Pooja.
In this episode, we're going to discuss whether a movie has ever inspired a character or campaign that you made. We have emails from Jorn in Sweden, asks about players who reject the premise. Ken from Canada asks about running games for big groups and shares an update. And Mike likes pinnacles. Who knew?
Wild.
I feel very targeted by this email.
If you'd like to contribute a story or question to the show, email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We also have a channel in our Discord. You could go to happyjacks.org/discord and get involved there. We have a Savage Worlds actual play GM'd by Engi starting up soon. We just had a one-shot of Savage Worlds that Engi GM'd for us yesterday. It was a lot of fun. You can check that out as well. Our March 2nd game days was a huge hit. We had 9 games in all different systems. The next one will be in May. Keep an eye out for that. Our indie designer of the month is Logan Timmons, he, him. You could check that out at breathingstories.itch.io. He's on Tumblr, and also Twitter is at ink_and_stories. Logan Timmons is a trans queer designer and the creative force behind Breathing Stories. He creates games of connection and self-reflection. This week we are talking about his game Incarnation. In Incarnation, you create a character who has just become aware that the life they are leading is not their first life. Using a tarot deck, you will create the story of this character and their past lives, uncovering secrets, pleasant and otherwise. With all that this character has been through, the weight of all they hold, who are they really? This is a solo game that you need a tarot deck and writing implements to play. It's $10 on itch.io. Please go support our designer of the month. That actually sounds fun as hell.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
really
No.
cool.
I'm gonna be looking that up later. So
It gives me like anxiety and the like I've already inebriated and I'm on itch and now I'm gonna play this game and I
Yeah.
I
I
won't
love
think
that.
about my past lives.
And the magical word, solo game.
Yeah.
You
Solo
don't have to worry about
games.
gathering anybody. You can just enjoy it.
So Kimmy left us with a fun question here. Have you ever been inspired to make a character or campaign because of a movie? We could probably add in TV show to that.
Sure.
But I specifically like the idea of it being, we'll go from like a visual media to bring something to the tabletop. I can't say this has ever happened to me.
Definitely not.
Never.
Oh, interesting.
Wild.
No, our entire year-long Pinnacles campaign is partially based on the movie The One, which is a perfect film. There's no need to interrogate that assessment further. However, have any of you been inspired in this way?
I've never seen the one and now I need to see the one.
You do need to see the one.
I was gonna say of all
the
the
Jet Li
people
movie.
in this
Yeah.
room are the ones. Oh, it's the Jet Li movie?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
The tagline is, the only person bad enough to beat Jet Li's ass is Jet Li.
I forgot about the tagline.
That might be my tagline for it, but I stand by my words.
Yes. And I would say the one stands by it as well.
So, character campaign ideas?
I kind of have like the broadest version of this, which is I wanted to experiment and run my Monster of the Week campaign that went super well and definitely didn't go off the rails at all. The World Ends Thursday. I had wanted to run that like more of an actual Monster of the Week TV show. And then my players kind of made me feel like maybe I should just let them do what they want, which is how that happened. I'd like to revisit that option again and kind of run a game like a TV show where it's one shots basically every episode, but like with the same characters. And like obviously I'm aggressively inspired by like early 2000s, late 90s urban fantasy shows and books in general. That's my favorite genre.
Would you want to
So-
lean into like, like X-Files was, let's keep it sci-fi, and Buffy is Buffy.
Yeah,
Whatever.
no, 1000%. If I could like run it again with less good players, I would do it that way.
Like pick a style or theme or something.
Yeah, basically like a single monster like one problem every episode, and just kind of deal with it that way, and then like sort of let the players make the B plot on their own. I still want to try it. I'll see if it ever works, but that's kind of more broad in the like inspired to make it because of a movie or a TV show. But like, I feel like there's no such thing as new ideas, so I feel like everything is.
I don't know.
Does that feel weird?
Yeah, I think we're all kind of the product of the stuff we've absorbed through life, right? I think the question actually is, like, if you haven't, how did you avoid doing
Yeah.
that? How did you go through life and just avoid doing that completely?
Did not realize that the Amish played D&D.
Right? Like, personally, I have. Certainly, like, in some of the stuff I've written, there was one module that I wrote for the D&D Adventures League in particular that was very influenced by Dark City, one of my favorite movies.
Nice.
And there was another one that I wrote that was very influenced by sort of the military team dynamic of movies like Aliens or Aliens. Really, just Aliens.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would say, like, I have not in the past for movies, but the one that I would really love to, like, interrogate that I think would be super fun in a TTRPG setting would actually be something like Inception for a horror game. And
Show your work.
I mean, because what you're talking about there, like, you get to key into a lot of the things I love about horror TTRPGs, which is fucking with your players' perceptions, minds, and bringing up their, like, most horrific, like, traumas in, like, their characters' traumas, not their players' traumas. Safety tools, please. Into the game in an organic way, and then also fucking with the sense of, like, whether or not they are in reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it would actually work really well in a system like, even something like Delta Green, where you could modernize it, and you have all these disparate people who are brought together, and then they are in these layers, they are trying to get back to reality, but they have been sucked into this multi-dreamscape that you could, like, even say, oh, tie it back into, if you wanted to run it in, like, a Call of Cthulhu, and they're in the dreaming lands, and then they wake up, or did they wake up? Or in the dreaming lands, or are they in another part of the dreaming lands? And it is like the number of layers you could get to, I think would be really, really fun in a limited campaign. Because I really just love that idea of, like, and honestly, like, let's be real, like, these are dreams I have had. This is a dream I've had yesterday when I woke up multiple times in my dream.
Nightmare. I feel like that would have a fun, like, you could build out a fun, like, totem mechanic where they, like, the top. I don't know what you'd do with it, but it would be cool to have, like, check it, see what happens every time.
Yeah. There was a version of Pinnacles when I was setting up to run it that I was like, okay, I want to do superheroes. I want to do a thing where they're getting other powers or whatever, and like, fucking with sense of reality and what that's going to be. And when we started playing, that decision wasn't fully made between multiverse, which, spoiler, that's where we are, to some version of, we're in a simulation. But the pure risk of, like, you're in the hyper room or whatever, what's it called in Star Trek? The
holodeck?
The holodeck, like,
Oh my god.
The danger room.
yeah, like, there's a version of that could work if you can hang on to the idea that the people in the virtual world matter, right? And that they are people and not just, like, dumb programs or whatever.
Sorry, finish your thing.
Yeah. So the the risk of that was so high that I wouldn't be able to land that plane that I was like, it's okay. I also like multiverse and fucking with reality that way. And there's lots I could do with it because reality is endless and we could still have a good time. But the first few episodes, I had not decided yet. And so it landed as we went.
Nice.
It's a very everything everywhere all at once kind of energy as well.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
You just reminded me, there is a video game that is famously hard to play, and I don't want to mention it because I want to spoil it. So if I don't say what the game is, I feel like I can say the spoilers.
I don't know if that's true, but okay.
Well, it's the idea, because basically...
I feel like if you mention what the game is, and then people could skip forward or mute for a little bit.
Yeah,
Sure.
hold on.
I might want to skip forward too.
God damn it. All right.
Yeah, let's do the name of the game.
Okay, the game is called Pathologic, and they've made a sequel since, that is just kind of a remake of the game because it's famously super fucking hard. I think 70% of people make it through the first day, and then 3% make it through the second. Anyway, there is a wild people, like, genuinely, I don't think people will get to it, but please mute or spoiler or fast forward until you get there.
Oh yeah, let's say skip ahead like 2 minutes.
Skip ahead 2 minutes. I'll try to keep this under 2 minutes. Where you get to talk to basically children who are playing a game, and that is what the game you are playing is. And then later you get to talk to the developers, and they have this conversation where you go like, oh, so it was all a dream. Why that sort of sucks. And you're like, well, it doesn't, but it still felt real. Do you not have any value because it was a dream? Or is there no value because it didn't happen? You are playing a game, it inherently didn't happen. So I really liked that philosophical concept, and I like it for the idea of like an Inception game, or even in a world where it's not supposed to, where it is a holodeck simulation or whatever, because why are you playing a tabletop like, you get to step back and be like, well, if it didn't matter because it was all a dream, then why are you playing a tabletop RPG? And the little Brechtian asshole in me likes how, like, awful that is, and how much it, like, disappears up its own butt. So, yeah, this is me waving now if you've muted.
That's exactly 1 minute.
Hell yeah.
Wow, very nice.
Thank you. If you've skipped at one...
I'll mention it when we get there, yeah.
There you go. 2 minutes.
Yeah, I like that kind of like meta aspect of it as well, which is what's like part of what's fun with an Inception type, because you know going into it, like more with a system like Delta Green, where normally you are dumped into something and you know fuck all about it because Delta Green hates you.
And then you roll a 99.
Yeah, and then you roll a 99. But it is something where like the mission could be. The other thing that's really fun always is to pull in aspects of, like, you have a system like Vampire the Masquerade, or you have a system like Night's Black Agents. Night's Black Agents, which is about spies. So you can live out your, like, international spy fantasy.
Real quick, welcome to the future. If you follow directions and skipped ahead 2 minutes, good job, but Claire only needed 1 minute, so you might as well wind back real quick.
But only 1 minute.
And it feels like really self-indulgent to say that, but like Night's Black Agents, one of the ways you could play it is based on the show Rubicon, which was on the AMC. And I was like obsessed with it for the whole season that it lasted.
Oh.
But it is a very insular kind of like, you are the like NSA number cruncher, pattern finders kind of situation, but then it expands from there. And I think that would be really fun to play that kind of like, it's a conspiracy theorist getting proven right, but you're not actually a conspiracy theorist because you are employed by the government to find the conspiracy.
Sure, yeah.
You are the conspiracy?
Yeah, in a lot of ways you are the conspiracy. Like, that kind of stuff just is so much fun. And there's so many movies and so many television shows that go to it. But Rubicon was one of my favorites in its kind of like meld of old school and new school feel.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I'm gonna... They're just so, it's so funny that Kimmy left us this question when she ran a One Ring campaign.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Sure,
Like, come on, Kimmy.
Yeah.
She's not here, so I'm gonna clown on her.
Why is that based on something?
Yeah, actually, there's this boy, and he's a chosen one.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
this
Okay.
giant shows up and is like, "You're a wizard," and it goes crazy from there. Yeah, they end up on the holodeck.
Oh.
But
Cool.
the sorry, but like, I feel like it inspired to make a character a campaign. There are whole games I've picked up because I liked the TV show version of it. I love Leverage, and so obviously I have the game. I own the Avatar game, which I was fine with. It's fine. But like, there's plenty. I'm trying to think of other like systems that are just made like Star Trek.
Yep.
That was my Second Star was my first Happy Jacks series.
That was your first
That was my
series?
first series.
And you stabbed a spaceship with a knife right out the gate.
Yeah, that's just me, man.
Yep.
That was, and I'm
Very telling.
every day I beg Dave to let me come back as the captain
Yeah.
because now I've watched most of Ann's Star Trek.
And then speaking of, like, to that point, on Happy Jacks, we have Burning Bright, which is the Blade Runner campaign.
Yeah.
You had on Jason's channel, we ran Jedi Gods.
Yep.
Yeah.
We also
other-
played XCOM, in the
Yeah.
world of XCOM, which also I wanted to mention the Fallout campaign that I ran on Happy Jacks was a lot of fun, and it had a mix of people who knew Fallout, people who'd never played it before, and we had to do our best to make it, to step away from the video game source enough that I wasn't just leaning into everything in the game because that wasn't going to be fun for half the table. And I know that the One Ring, Jay, can you talk a little bit about the like different experience, like people had different experience levels with Lord of the Rings and that?
Yeah. But I mean, it was great. A couple of us just had, like movie experience. I'd read the books and never really took a deep dive like, say, Kimmy or Kai had, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But really, what was great about it was that Kimmy was just open to us contributing things as we wanted to. I think every single one of us made an effort to be as faithful as we could, mainly because we had a couple of, master's degree level scholars, like, Tolkien scholars in the room. And so we didn't want to deviate too far from that. But I mean, Kai and Kimmy, they were both like really cool about it, very welcome, very understanding. They told us the things we needed to know when we needed to know them. And it was just a lot of fun playing in that world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed like you all were having a really good time and
Yeah.
that it was accommodating to the people who had really different experience levels.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, a lot of the people listening to that stream probably would be coming from different experience levels too,
Yep.
So
Yeah.
you do have to balance, like, really just laying all that lore out with keeping the game moving at a good clip, making sure that everybody out there in the audience could gather and comprehend and feel welcomed by the game.
And Bumbletrue points out that Jason also had a Into the Spider-Verse AP.
yeah, we played Masks. We used the Into the Spider-Verse. That was also a very early Abria Iyengar project, which you can still catch on my YouTube if you want.
I loved that.
Probably okay games, I think. I don't know. Whatever. Nobody knows.
So if you guys could pick a new property that you could build a game off of or a character off of, what would you pick?
Oh boy.
Like, I've never watched a movie in my life.
Might be
I
a
mean,
little-
it really is. It's like when somebody asks me for a book recommendation, I'm like, I don't know how to read.
Yeah.
I've wanted to for a long time, and I don't know how to do it because Girl Underground would do this, but has its own very specific mechanic. There's a series by Seanan McGuire called The Wayward Children.
Oh my god.
And I'm
You're
obsessed.
just stealing my shit now.
Yeah.
You're the same person.
Yeah, yes. I live in your bookshelf, actually.
Makes sense.
And
Elf on the shelf over here.
yeah, Elf on the Shelf. But
Goblin on the shelf.
yes, my people. But yeah, the Wayward Children series is about kids who have fallen into other worlds, like Alice would or like Dorothy did, and then are sent home, and how they cope with being home.
Ooh.
Or don't
wow.
cope.
Or
It
don't
is more
cope.
accurate.
Yeah, they end up at a school for wayward children, and then they are sent back, and like it's about them like learning and like going on little adventures to either like find their way back through their door or find their way, or like just again not cope with being back in the mundane world, or it like they're little novellas. They're great. They're perfect. I cannot highly recommend them enough. But also, I want to play in a world like I want to play in this world. I don't know how I would, but it's so good.
That's something I've been thinking about for a long time. Like The Wayward Children, and also obviously The World of Kate Daniels by Alona Andrews is really like lends itself to that kind of like books. I could do this because like you know what just came out not long ago, I think last year. Yoon-Ha Lee came out with the Machineries of Empire TTRPG.
Okay.
Jason's like,
and if anybody hasn't heard me talk about Yoon-Ha Lee's Machineries of Empire, where have you been? Every time I've been around, it is about a universe in which like it's Asians in space, and with calendrical.
That was Claire laughing.
Calendrical warfare, and where the math is so advanced it creates exotic effects, aka magic.
Yep.
So an absolutely outstanding, fantastic trilogy. Highly recommend it. You don't have to understand math in any way, shape, or form to read it. I would, however, look up the content warnings before you traipse it. But that has a TTRPG now, and I am so excited about it because you play from all these different factions, and you are attempting to overthrow your little piece of the calendar.
I've not heard you talk about this,
Oh
and
my
I'm wondering
God.
if I'm a bad friend now.
No, it's fine. It's just that, so what happens is that the basis of the system of this kingdom is that, and really the way that technology works throughout the universe, is that people's belief and adherence to a specific calendar allows for exotic effects. But if, say, your empire is fighting a neighboring empire, you are also fighting over whose calendar is dominant in that area, because your exotic effects will work or not work depending on whether your calendar is ascendant.
Huh.
Wild.
Okay.
It's
Well, yeah.
amazing and
I'm very
in a
into this.
very, very interesting way to look at a lot of hard things about empires and systems and what people will do.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna
it's
bump
like a
that to
nice-
the top of my read list.
Like
Right.
It's been on there.
complexities and like complexities in like there are some really truly atrocious villains, but even they have complexities about them. And I just find it like I just re-listened to it all along with a collection of short stories at like in like December or January, and really it's such a highly recommended book series. So I'm really excited to like rope some people into playing this TTRPG with me at some
Yeah.
point.
Jason and I are on Libby, like, where do I...
Can I throw out a weird counterexample
Please do.
for this before we move on?
Mhm.
So everybody assumes when they look at Demigods, the game that I made, that it was made to play Percy Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time I made it, I had not read or seen a Percy Jackson property.
Which is wild to me.
And I find that curious. My main influences were American Gods, Good Omens. You know, I liked those. The stories those told were what is real, right? What is reality? What does it mean for your perception to affect reality? I'm an armchair quantum physicist. You know, like the observer effect. What does it mean that looking at something can change the outcome of an experiment? That, you know, those big ideas were kind of inspiring to me. And then, okay, also we have to make a game where you can like hit stuff and get shiny toys, right? Like, and so leaning in, and I loved mythology growing up. I'd read a ton of mythology. Obviously, Rick Riordan did too. But the fact that we wound up with an RPG that was made completely separate, and I'm gonna just assume Rick Riordan has never seen my game.
Could we send it to friend of the show, Rick Riordan?
No, but I don't know. I found it interesting that we wound up in a very similar place. I still don't think Demigods is like the perfect thing to play Percy Jackson, but lots of people do use it that way. I also don't think it's the perfect thing to play American Gods. American Gods is terrifying, right? Like, the gods are here, and they're dying, and they're, like, struggling to claw belief out of anyone. Like, I didn't want to play that game either. You know, I was, like, trying to find something fun in between, and that was the fun part of the challenge. But I'm wondering what your thoughts on, you know, parallel development or things that sort of show up at the same time or that sort of thing.
I mean,
Because that happens so much in like movies and TV, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, right? Like, is it that a seed gets planted somewhere and it's something that happens, or you know, are we as a society kind of following similar trains of thoughts? So when something is put in front of us, a number of us, or however many of us, kind of go in our own different ways when that happens. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's a process that's kind of been going on for a while now, and just things kind of keep spawning from one thing to another.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only thing I can... Has that, like... Anybody... Can any of you think of a time in the TTRPG space that has happened?
I was gonna say, because, like, in movies we get it all. We get dueling all the time. We had Ants and A Bug's Life come out at the same time. We
Armageddon and Deep Impact.
Yeah,
and
so
then Tornado, not Tornado.
Twister.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
and then there was the one with Tommy Lee Jones and the volcano in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
That was the other one.
Yeah.
There was another one with Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you see it in, like, so, like, that dueling happens. You do get book trends, and people, Riley will correct me about this later, but the idea of, like, sometimes publishers don't want to take the risk, so everything is now fairy porn, like, which, by the way, I'm gonna sell out and make that tabletop, specifically for all of my ACOTAR lovers. I hate ACOTAR, but I'm gonna do it for you.
What are you saying?
So, A Court of
Thorns
and Roses is very popular, incredibly popular romantasy, and it spawned an entire generation of romantasy.
Oh.
And so this is the effect that, like,
Okay.
one very popular thing in books, and then publishers will suddenly buy up a shit ton of those manuscripts or things that have already been self-published and put them out because ACOTAR made money, therefore this will make money, versus, you know, ever taking a fucking risk or, you know, publishing BIPOC authors.
It's why after Twilight we got so many girl plus monster romance books.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we see it all there. I was gonna say that TTRPGs feels like the last bastion, and please don't ruin this image for me of, like, no, we're just gonna make our weird little shit. Like, I now own a game in which you can play, like, a little toy that, like, fights Stitch Punk is the concept, and it is on a shelf next to a game that's deeply invested in how language dies. Like, please don't make it more homogenous than that.
Yeah.
Well, James V has put in the chat, since none of us can come up with an example on our own, is that in the late 80s, early 90s, you had Champions and the Marvel Superheroes TTRPG that came out. You have, and there have been, I'm sure there are more examples of, like, people putting out really similar space games at the same time, or people putting out, like, PBTA games as well, that, like, because so many of them are in development at any one time, I feel like there's going to be some overlap there in what people believed that there was a niche to fill.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that they aren't all amazing projects and all of that, but, like, you see a void, and I think that's how a lot of TTRPGs get made, is that I can't hack an existing system enough to make the game I want to make, so I'm going to make a new game.
Yeah.
The Drop.
I
hacked it enough.
Yeah. I was gonna say that we don't tend to have, like, dueling in genre. I think we tend to get dueling in system, where, like, suddenly everyone and their mother is playing a Fortress in the Dark game, and I hate it.
All right.
I'm playing 2 this year.
We should move on to our main thing. You don't mind if I start us off?
Do it.
All right, here we go. My dearest happy Jacques and Jacquelines, this is John from Sweden writing to you with sort of a question about players who reject the premise of the game. First, background. I am so happy. After many years of no meat space RPG gaming, I finally have a group of non-imaginary people who actually want to meet at a physical location to play an RPG. Yes, this is the moment. I was recently asked to run a game after work at my partner's job for her and a couple of her coworkers. My partner is no stranger to RPGs, but out of the new players, one had never played an RPG before. The other one had played lightweight games previously, like Fiasco, but also has problems with social anxiety. Enter the choir. Both of them are Jehovah's Witnesses, while my partner and I are agnostic atheists. I realized right away that I needed to ensure that the playing environment felt safe for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Thank
yeah,
you.
Fantastic.
Yes. Different belief systems, absolutely want to make everyone feel comfortable. I wanted to pick something easy and fun to run, and settled on Brindlewood Bay. I thought that
Old
maybe...
lady solving crimes is the best.
Yeah. I thought that maybe the Lovecraftian background conspiracy could be an issue for people of intensely religious orientation, which the witnesses are. But since the conspiracy in BWB doesn't kick in immediately, I decided to go ahead with it. As it turned out, one of the new players said during the introduction that they weren't comfortable with any occult content. You could argue whether Lovecraftian themes are occult or not, but the game does have a move called the occult move. So there we go. I think we've taken the right approach here. Yeah. I responded that I would cut any occult content from the game to accommodate them and that they would never have to use the occult move. With that, they were happy to proceed. That's great. It sounds like you had the grown-up conversation we're constantly advertising here.
Yeah, wild. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's incredible. Everyone talked about what they needed and what they didn't want to do, and then we forged a path that suited that.
And no one seemed to feel attacked.
Yeah. Okay, I should finish this. We made characters and had a marvelous first session of gaming. They were really leaning into their characters, and there was a lot of laughter around the table. I couldn't be happier with how the session turned out. We scheduled the second session in 2 weeks. This leaves me wanting to write a new conspiracy for the game to make it more mundane for my religious players. I'm happy to do this, but this brings me to my question. Have you had experience with players who have rejected or otherwise had issues with the setting of the game, and did you accommodate them? If so, how? Follow-up question, what do you think I should base my Brindlewood Bay conspiracy on? I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I thought it would be fun to pick your minds for ideas. They are fun places, our minds. Thank you for reading,
One way to put that.
and thank you for being awesome. All the best. Jorn from Sweden. P.S. I'm aware that the Jehovah's Witnesses aren't exactly the most diversity-friendly group in the world, and I'm not going to let any phobism slip by me, but I don't think it will be a thing with these two players. Of course, we want to treat everyone as individuals and not as members of a group. I think that's a great caveat to add as well. So let's reverse a little bit and say, have you had experience with players who've rejected the premise or setting or both? Clara thought she was playing Star Trek in one game, but she was playing something else
Okay, hold on.
when we played Star Trek.
Okay, first of all, I'd never seen a Star Trek.
I'm totally kidding. I'm sorry.
I feel like when I saw the question of like, have you ever had a player reject the premise? It kind of gives me the like flashback, the bad flashback of like when you're playing a game and someone is trying to be clever at you. Wow, I'm like self-roasting. They're trying to be clever, but in a shitty way. So they're like, oh, you're like, okay, here's a call to action. They're like, I put the phone down. And you're like, okay, well, I need you to answer the call to action, or I guess we're going to, start playing, day in the life of whatever you're up to. And I feel that's sort of what I kind of felt like looking at has anyone rejected the premise? This feels more like, have you ever had to adjust the premise of a game to fit, like, issues? And it also kind of, I feel bad, I'm going to come in so hot on this. It rubs me the wrong way, because I've always been a proponent of, like, there is the correct game for you if you want to play it. The caveat being, if you know how to run Brindlewood Bay, moving to another game that has conspiracy in it might not be as easy because you don't know how to play it. And that's how you end up playing like a system you've never run before and all your players, and you can't help them as easily. But like, it does inherently bother me for reasons I assume are mental illness that that you would just like throw out a huge mechanic from the game because I worry that it would break the game.
So, I love Brindlewood Bay, and I've read a bunch of it before, and I would say that like, it's specifically what this person is doing. I would say that like, what you're dealing with is like somebody who X-carded a portion of the game, but not an integral portion. The occult part of Brindlewood Bay is not actually integral to Brindlewood Bay. It is an amazing flavor of it, and it riffs off of a Jessica Fletcher meme. Like, the whole kind of concept behind that. So the whole thing, I can't believe I didn't talk about Brindlewood Bay when we were talking about the topic, but whatever. So Brindlewood Bay is basically riffs on both the idea of cozy mysteries and like the kind of OG cozy mysteries that are like your Agatha Christie Miss Marples and Murder, She Wrote, and other similar genres to that, where old ladies are solving crimes in their community where a lot of deaths are happening. So many deaths. And it riffs a lot on those like 80s and 90s television shows. The occult part of that comes in where someone wrote a really long letter into like the site that did Jezebel.
Isn't the site called Jezebel?
Yeah.
No, but it was part of a
Mm.
whatever. And it was like kind of a riff on like the whole idea that like Jessica Fletcher was a part of all of these. The reason why all these people were dying around Jessica Fletcher was not because a lot of other people were murdering people, but because Jessica Fletcher was an agent of the old ones, and in a like an authority figure, like a detective or a police person, like a cop, calls her on it, and she's like, "Well, it's real good of you to like understand, and we are quite close to our goal." And then like tentacles come out of her face, and she eats the person.
Sure.
Wild. Okay.
So this is like deep internet lore, I guess now, but at the time it was like a really popular meme. Is that Jessica Fletcher is Cthulhu. So when you talk about Brindlewood Bay in general, like it's not actually like the occult portion of it. If you want to take it and make it another dark conspiracy, you're not removing an integral portion of the game in that way. Like you're not breaking it mechanically and stuff like that. You could reflavor the occult move to something that is more conspiracy based.
Sure.
And
True.
ties into what flavor you want your conspiracy to be without, I think, like, oh, you need to ditch that system. Because also, you don't even like, a lot of times, depending on how long your campaign is, you won't encounter your first conspiracy clue until, like, session 4.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I truly, it just, and because I haven't played Brindlewood Bay, I think part of it for me is that, like, if you reject the occult from it, I'm like, I'm sure it doesn't break the game. I have, to reject the game, a huge part of a game in general, for example, I think it's no surprise that on Happy Jacks we're not a huge fan of playing D&D for everything. I've seen so many D&D games that are like, we're using the D&D system, but we've put it in a sci-fi world. And I'm like, Eberron exists,
Yeah.
which if you want to, Spelljammer exists if you want to stay in the system. You could also grab, like, it's like, oh no, it's my homebrew, it's just sci-fi now. We've rewritten all the
We
rules.
want to play Dune with
Yeah.
D&D.
And I'm like, man, surely there's another person out there
Yeah.
who's written it better. I've seen people who want to do Percy Jackson in the D&D world, and I sit there, I'm like, I could show you Scion, or I could throw demigods at you.
Sure.
Like, that's what gets me when they say, like, have you ever rejected the system? That's where I get a little frustrated.
I had that same kind of knee-jerk reaction when I saw the, like, headline of the question. Like, have you had anyone reject the premise? I was like, well, not for a long time, because session 0 covers the premise and makes sure we all have
Yeah.
buy-in. And I'm reading the rest of the letter going like, oh, maybe we're not thinking of this exactly the same way. And I was wondering about the occult part of this, like maybe Brindlewood Bay has some flexibility around that. But like if somebody sat down to play demigods, we're like, this is cool, but I don't want anything related to mythology. Right? I'd be like, well, I don't know how to modify this game for you because that is at the heart of it. Versus if they said, I don't want to have any like sword and claw fighting. Like we'll make a game where that's not the thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like, to me, it's a system of like, I can't think of a perfect analogy, but like if you think about demigods and you say like, cool, well, I really don't want, like, I'm fine with the demigods aspect of it, but I am not in a place, like, to me, this is like a lines and veils question, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
That is what we are talking about.
Exactly.
Rather than like a wholesale rejection of the game, it is, say, I was a person who recently went through a loss, and it's like, I cannot deal with afterlife shit right now.
Sure.
We are playing demigods. I love demigods. I love mythology. No afterlife. Like, we just don't reference it. We excise it from our game specifically. And demigods still works. You're missing an aspect of it.
Right.
But demigods still works.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you want to say, oh yeah, there are all these pantheons, but the Greeks aren't there.
Yeah.
I had when I was running a Camp Half-Blood day camp, we had a kid whose mom was like, I have signed him up for this camp. He is not allowed to worship other gods. And I was like, rad. He's not worshiping anyone.
Yeah, we're playing pretend here.
We
like,
are playing pretend lady. But like, well, she was very Jewish, and and I was like, well, the rule is no gods before me, but I guess you can work with the ones behind him. Like,
yeah.
Sorry, that got weirdly dirty. But like, if there's a premise like that, I understand the lines and veils question. And like, that sounds important.
And it sounds like that's essentially what they accomplished.
This is what that is, because their religious beliefs like are prohibiting them from this section, and I feel like that is in the end a lines and veils thing. It is not a personal preference. It is not a like gotcha moment. It's not somebody being like, I signed up for this, but also fuck you.
Yeah.
It's also, it may be the case, not knowing these Jehovah's Witnesses in particular, they may have the knee-jerk reaction of, I saw the occult move, I don't want occult stuff in the game, but they don't even know what they're excising, right?
Yeah.
And to then say, well, then we can't play this. I love what Jordan did here.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get in, they're going to play this game, they're going to have so much fun with their friends, and they're going to see, oh, even if we did have the occult move, these are just like pretend characters on TV, right? Like, we are not worshiping the occult, we are reading a book about it, or whatever, which I'm not real familiar with that faith and like whether they're even allowed to read a Lovecraftian book or something. Like, maybe they're not, which fine, I respect that. But they're in a position to experience it at all now, versus like, I'm sure they caught some flack from like satanic panic leftovers, and you know, that is in the church and just part of the conversation, but they desperately want to try out this RPG. Like, that's awesome, and they have a way to start it, and you've modded it to meet their lines and veils. I think it's I'm not even thinking of this as they have rejected the premise. They have requested a specific line that was tricky to work out, and you're probably gonna have to figure out something for your occult move, but maybe it's like the research move, or I don't know what the occult move is supposed to do. But
and it sounds like it's gonna, I don't remember specifically, I would have to look it up because it's been a while since I looked at it.
Is it like do magic or understand magic?
I don't know.
That's fine. That's fine.
Like, you were asking me questions. I have not opened that book in quite some time.
Come on, you ran a one-shot like 2 years ago. Why didn't you memorize the whole game?
I know, right?
The people are going
I mean,
to
I can
die.
tell you a lot about like different specialty things, but like not that move in particular, which makes me kind of sad. Like, literally interviewed the creator the whole nine, but whatever. But this I think leads us really well into the follow-up question.
Yes.
Which is what should the new conspiracy be if it is not
Yeah, let's talk about that.
a Lovecraftian one?
There's a suggestion in chat that it could be a great big bomb. You know, it's like a government conspiracy, and there's a weapon or something.
Oh,
that...
sure. It could be something technology or like medicine based, maybe.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, I think it's fun to like pull it in more personally to the town itself. That,
Sure.
like, because you
yeah.
are in a situation where like all of your players are part of a book club in the town. and you live there and you work there and all of this stuff, and like having it be kind of like a dark town conspiracy.
Mhm.
that-
Hot
that-
fuzz.
Hot fuzz
not
style.
dark, but like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that idea, yeah.
Yeah,
like-
there's a a murder cover up or
well, there's like a shadow government.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
I love I love a small town shadow government. What can I say?
I love a corrupt HOA.
Yes, exactly.
you mean an HOA?
Just an HOA.
Right, there
yeah.
you go.
Something like that pulls it in maybe a little bit, like it broadens it out, but not quite so far into left field, and you don't have to get into like occult and mystery and supernatural stuff.
Sure. I wonder if space aliens would.
That's what I
Would
was
trigger it,
thinking. Yeah, like something extraterrestrial.
Yeah, because if
More
you are a
people?
space alien and you can blend in with humanity, I could see the argument for wanting to start in a small town and just see like, can we make this work? Because city has so many variables.
Mhm.
And then it's like they're going to, you were trying to stop them from signaling the mothership and putting a full scale invasion into the United States.
Sure.
I'm a
Or
huge-
wherever your game is set, sorry.
No, you're good. I'm a huge fan of any petty stakes, which is why I love the concept of like a corrupt HOA just trying to beautify the neighborhood at
Yeah.
any cost.
No flamingos for anyone.
Yeah. I also like Brindlewood Bay, to my understanding, is elderly people most of the time, and the idea of the fact that like sometimes, first of all, I've been to like elderly retirement communities, and it's like it's a teeny little world in its own, and it's like they're all back in college, and it's terrifying in a lot of ways. So like kind of leaning into the college aspect of these communities where it's like where you-
Honestly, I hope this isn't too gross for anyone. An actual real world report about the rampant STDs in a lot of these places.
oh yeah
Oh.
It's
yeah.
just like mind blowing.
But that's the thing is like you can kind of pull conspiracies from like college movies. I'm a big fan of the good old like let's save the camp with a talent show kind of thing.
Yep.
But in this case, it's like let's save our community because governments tend
Yeah.
to
Oh, it could be an outside
overlook.
developer coming in.
a
like
developer coming
Yeah.
to like tear it down. I think is a really fun one.
Yep.
Yeah, something commercially related. Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Especially if it ends up being like, I am also a big fan of like Shady Development Corporation is actually like the thing that all your victims that they have investigated up to this point have in common is that they all like refuse to sell to a developer or
Yeah.
Mhm.
even better that they were all members of like a like angel investment group,
Yeah.
and then like they're culling their ranks to get smaller to increase the profits for the select few, and then you can bring in kind of some of those like Ponzi scheme type situations, except deadly.
Yeah.
Oh, evil MLM.
Yeah.
All MLMs are evil, but like a really evil.
Like, literally.
Literally.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
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 So yeah, so like there's a lot to mine there in terms of like your run of the mill conspiracies.
Yeah.
You don't have to bring in a cult to the game, and it would still. And then, as Jason said, you just reflavor your occult move to, like go closer to. And that's nice too, because like I think that there's, if I'm remembering correctly, there's like kind of a long-term mechanic in Brindlewood Bay where you can like get kind of sucked into the conspiracy yourself
Mhm.
as a player.
You can join the
And-
MLM.
And yeah, like you could join the MLM. The HOA has a point actually. The shadow government controlling like the shadow town government is actually right, and they need to like if I join them, they can be like I will make it better.
Right. Or
Wouldn't
or
it be
you
nice-
join them to spy a little
Yeah.
bit. You know, you're trying to get the
Mhm.
inside scoop.
It would be nice to have a mall here. Like
You know, someplace you know it's flat. My morning walks would be easier.
Yeah.
And I really like that you. I feel like this is an excellent example of accommodating people for their lights and fails, and I
Mhm.
just want to point that out that like we can be more open and accepting of people's individual lines.
This was a masterful execution of a
Yeah.
Session Zero.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
just books should be written about this.
And it opened this wonderful world to some new people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we do the next one?
Yes.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
I can take it.
All right, great.
All right.
It is long if you want to tap out.
You
then
can
feel
pop for
free.
it.
Yeah, no
You can pop
worries.
for it. I just
Let's
dodged
see.
all
All right.
reading.
Hey, Team Jacko. Getting right to the point. I've been GMing since the mid-70s with, I feel and have heard, mostly positive success. When I was in university in the 80s, I handled a varying sized group that was never less than 6 and peaked at 10-ish. Well, one game had 12 players, but it was a 3-session minigame and I co-GM'd with a friend. When I went through my traditional girlfriend / wife / family / real job / kids / no gaming, or no gaming. Then the kids get older / settle into jobs / rediscover gaming many years later. I've been there. I ended up GMing 2 groups, both at 3 to 4 players. I found it much more enjoyable, got more done, more focus on each player, easier to pursue goals and storylines.
Yes.
Recently, both groups have gone through personnel changes, and I've ended up with 6 players in each group. Most are significantly younger, the oldest is mid-40s, and the youngest players are mid-20s. I'm 60. Here's the issue. I feel like I've lost the ability to handle larger groups. Progress is very slow. I feel like players are getting bored or feeling left out. I don't feel as invested in the story because we're not getting as deep into the character stories as has happened when I had smaller groups. We're playing Savage Worlds, so things should be moving quickly, but it doesn't seem like they are. I don't know if I'm just out of practice or getting too old to keep up the energy, or if players are just different. I blame video games. I think I'm joking, but I'm not sure. Thoughts? Anywho, if you could share your sage advice on how to run an exciting, involving, engaging game for larger groups, I would greatly appreciate that. And if it's possible to push this up in the pipeline, that would be amazing. Because I'm getting pretty dejected and need help fast.
Why don't we pause there and address that question first?
For sure.
First of all, I don't think we can just dismiss the impact of video games on tabletop gaming. Like, in the video game, for 1,000 hours at a time, you're the hero. You are the center of attention. The story is about you and your character. You know, and if you're playing Skyrim or Baldur's Gate 3 or whatever, like, everything revolves around you and you are constantly involved in every decision. That's awesome. That's what video games can do. But then understanding that there's a shift at a tabletop game and we can't just have a table of 5 goblins, like, that is a difficult thing to communicate sometimes.
This is why Clara and I aren't allowed to play together anymore.
That's actually true. When Pooja and I are in a table together, our characters fall in love and also murder everything.
Because 1 + 1 = 5 in
Yes.
this case.
Look, if you're gonna have a haunted layer at the table,
As a person who literally was playing Baldur's Gate and is now here, yes, that like the one thing I hate about Baldur's Gate is actually that I have to micromanage everyone else's character. Don't do that at a D&D table. That's widely considered shit practice.
Yep.
A dick move even. Oh man, you might listen. Big tables are hard. Full stop. And it may just be you may be projecting on people by saying, "Hey, I think they're bored." I don't want to diminish like how you feel about this, but I think everyone at this table has run a game and then at the very end of it been like, "Okay, but am I doing a good job? Are you guys having fun? Do you guys like me?" And
I refuse to be called out this matter.
Yeah,
I didn't come here for this.
Yeah, I'm upset that I am so close to Jason right now, and I did that. Can feel the shame. But the truth of it all is like, they actually, if they keep coming back, they actually might not be that bored or that upset. But you can always do a temperature check or define the relationship with your players. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, like explicitly ask, is this game fun for you? Probably in a one-on-one environment, but
This is where wishes and stars can really help you out, because like without the baggage of "Are you having fun?" I'm asking you if you're having fun at this thing I'm doing for you.
Are you mad at me?
Yes. You get to say like, "Hey, what do you want to see more of?
Yeah.
What are you liking about this? What would you like?" There's the there's a thorns and roses variant
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, are there things you would change about this if you had the chance? And it becomes a much less fraught kind of way to ask, are you mad at me or are you bored?
Sure.
You
Yeah.
can put it on, check yes or no on a piece of paper and give it to people ahead of time.
And from a practical point of view, disagree with me if you want, but 6 is the hardest hard cap. I would rather max out at 5, and the magic number is 4. Like, I think 3 is also too small sometimes. So, honestly, 4 or 5 is the magic number. No more shall it be. That's my take on it. The fact that you ran a game with 10 people means you're actually a superhero, and you didn't know this about yourself. And the fact that you're running a game for 6 people regularly now, or 2 different games, like, that's incredible. I can't do that.
Yeah.
When you were you ran a bunch of games for like kids at camp, right?
Yeah.
Like how big were those groups?
Oh God. Maximum. So I put a maximum cap at 6 and ran 2 games back to back. Like I would do. They only had like an hour and a half to play, and running 6 7 to 11-year-olds through any kind of game is a nightmare. But I ran 6 one day and 6 another, and then they
And then
they
they
could
like
go.
alternated.
Yeah, and then they alternated. Honestly, it's for me, the difference is that it's about just brevity, because kids take that age group especially takes a lot, is a little harder to like work through. I was gonna say, Jay, I think you've also worked with that age range.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like with that age, it's a lot of like, and then there's a dragon, what do you do? And then it's, you attack the dragon. Like, that's more of it.
Sure. Yeah. A little bit of guidance. I run games at a place called Hero Workshop. We run after-school D&D programs for, kids from like 8 to, I think, 16 is our oldest right now. And those tables, like, I'm running about, I think, four tables, a couple of which have 7 players, like, each week. For kids, it's certainly, that's its own kind of beast, right? Because you're dealing with kids you're dealing with players who don't necessarily know how to regulate. And so there's a lot of talking over one another. There's a lot of, main character syndrome, because Jason, like you mentioned, they're used to playing video games or, watching media where the hero is very clear and has all of the weight of the narrative, right? So yeah, they're playing video games where they're just active all the time, so they can't help but chime in on everybody's turn. Like, they've always got to say something. And when you get that with 7 kids, after a certain point, you just have to, okay, let's take it down, remind them of sort of the etiquette of playing a game. Don't talk over one another. Let everybody have their turn. And I mean, sometimes, honestly, that's kind of what you need to do with adults too.
Yeah.
The table talk gets too extreme, and you just have to dial things back and say, listen, let's respect everybody's time while we're at the table.
It's so funny that we as gamers have this stereotype of being antisocial, like trolls in the basement. But in fact, being a good gamer is being a good conversationalist. It's listening. It's asking questions. It's being engaged in what somebody's saying and not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Yeah, making active decisions when the time calls for it.
Yeah.
And listening to what other people are doing so you can make the...
Yeah.
My friend and I have a thing we yell at each other a lot because we're very stressed all the time, which is about LARP. LARP is not a beginner's social hobby. Tabletop RPGs are also kind of not a beginner social hobby. There's a lot of things in it to facilitate that, like, getting better at things like roleplay. But if you cannot be in a space where you can actively listen, actively step back and let other people have their moment, all these things, it's a good training ground for it. But I would argue that, like, it is improv, and improv is also not a beginner social experiment. If I'm mad at you in character, you need to have the mental capacity to go, okay, this character is mad at me, Clara is not. So to that end, that again, 6 is a lot of people at a table. But I think with adults, if you're burning out, it's probably because it's 6 people at a table.
Yeah. It is hard. I mean, that is just objectively true. It's harder to run that big group.
And I would say, like, to your point about not getting as deep into the character stories and stuff like that, you were able, I think, like, personally, I've only run games for 4 people. No less, no more, just 4.
Very nice.
But what I would think you could do is, like, it seems like 6 people would take a lot longer to get through plot elements. And that's why the going seems slow. If you simplify the plot that you are giving them, and it would allow a little bit more breathing time for character stories, and maybe
And
have
give you less prep.
and give you less prep, and have a little bit more breathing room for your characters to have, like, relationships and interpersonal stories between each other, which can, like, so not everything in the plot has to affect every player. Like, you want to have it spread out so you don't have, like, one main character, as y'all were talking about. But at the same time, like, if you allow interpersonal drama, if you allow some, like, inter-character drama and relationships to develop and have those kind of affect what's going on rather than always the other way around, then you can feel like you're getting more depth, and people get a little bit more spotlight time together at the table with each other. It's all theoretical for me.
I would also just say the quiet part out loud. Gang, it seems like you're not getting enough character development. Are you, is this, and this I would say as a group, right? Like, is this a good amount? Are you having, like, is this a good thing even beyond, like, a official, like, roses and thorns sort of thing? Like, hey, this is the vibe I'm getting. Are you having a good time? Do you want more of this as a group, right? Like, do you want, you know, like, not my feelings are hurt, but, and they might be, and I get it. It's like, sometimes that's hard to talk about, but often just saying it out loud and saying, it seems like you all are not having the best time, or you're disengaged, or whatever. Do you want more plot? Do you want more character time? Do you want more personal stories? Do you know, this is malleable. It's our hobby together. It's not me making a thing for you. It's a thing we're all doing together, right? And I want to make sure I'm not just on autopilot. I want to make sure we're doing the thing that you all are enjoying too, because it's not me running an entertainment stage. It's us making a thing together.
Yeah, it should be fun for you too. On a more, like, actionable level, 2 things I really like with large groups of players: split your party. You've got 6 players. That's 3 and 3. Perfect. Make it so that if you've got puzzles, it is one team at home has to figure out how to do X, so that the team abroad can do Y. Is a really easy way to, like, not easy, but, like, is a fun way to, like, balance that out. And then also, every dog has his day. If you've got a consistent game, especially, highlight 2 players each session. Be like, all right, this you can pull, if you know their backstories, if they've given you even a shred of something to grab onto. You've got a tiefling. Awesome. We're going to a community of tieflings next game, and we're all gonna, and you get to explain the cultural relevance of whatever they're up to in this new town, and then that one player feels special for 1 game. And then even if you do 2 on Mekong, our GM Jerry opens almost every episode with a flashback, and it's excellent to give the player a moment, and then we go into the story again. And it's it really gives you that character development, and B, kind of preps the rest of the episodes when we rest of the game session.
One thing I will say is, if things are proving just too difficult, and if you talk to your players and you find out that maybe things are moving a little too slowly, and that people aren't exactly having a good time, I mean, you may have to do a reset. You're playing Savage Worlds, which, yeah, moves at a steady clip. There might be another game or another system that would work for a story that you want to tell, that everybody wants to tell, that would be more accommodating to that.
That's something where, like, a PBTA, where players end up narrating so much of what's going on when they do their moves and things like that. Like, mechanically, it works pretty fast. It is a lot of, like, more, like, roleplay focused. So you end up with more spotlight time for each player because you narrate less than they narrate more.
Yeah. And that also might uncover or even let the player identify themselves who is going, oh, I really don't like the narrative power and responsibility on me in a PBTA game. I like the amount that I'm quiet at our big, more like trad table. If we do go back to playing D&D, like I am comfortable with the amount that I'm being quiet, and it's okay that I don't get equal spotlight. That's great. I have had players tell me that, like, I'm having a good time. Don't worry about me. I will engage, and I'm not gonna like be a drain on the table, but I'm also not gonna be the shining star, and I'm having a good time, and I'm not gonna ruin it for anyone else. But that's where I am, and having a little PBTA break or something like that just might help everybody identify what kind of player they are, so that they can also self-advocate, because it doesn't have to be all on you to make sure everyone's having a good time. People should be able to, especially if you're playing with adults, they should be able to communicate these things, and it's okay to ask them to communicate those things because they're adults. Now, when you're working with kids, it gets a little different, and it's important to be very careful about having these kinds of conversations. But it sounds, I think he was talking about adults. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 20s to 4.
should we get the back
Sure.
half of
Yeah.
this one?
No.
Anyone want to take
Do
this?
you
I can take it back. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, man.
All right. All right. And the follow-up. This is like when a song kind of pauses in the middle and there's that silence.
Yeah.
And then it kind of comes back. Yeah, okay. Can I just make this the PS? Sure. Back in episode Mumble Murmur, I asked you about how not to offend a young woman joining my group, in which I was playing Rippers, a Victorian monster hunting adventure, and trying to stay historical but not offensive. You asked me to let you know how it went. Well, after the 2 new players joined, my wife grabbed another 2 players to join the group. Kids of friends of ours and her boyfriend. Or a kid of friend of ours and her boyfriend. That's right, another young woman and her Indian boyfriend. Imagine how much I covered and recovered and stressed safety tools and making sure everyone had fun, etc. Here's what resulted. The first woman is playing a snarky, doesn't give a shit attitude alchemist/witch, so she's fine with whatever. Obviously, I'm not making a big deal out of her character choices to allow her to be comfortable with what she's chosen, and not to call her out and make her feel uncomfortable. As we progress, I may start having NPCs react more to her attitude, but only if it feels fun and comfortable. Young woman number 2 went for stinking rich, adventure-seeking big game hunter, who never bothered getting married because she doesn't want some stuffy man telling her to stay home. She is too rich to care. She can just buy new friends if her current ones get offended by her behavior.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Fifth circle of magic.
Here's my favorite. There's a hindrance in Savage Worlds called jingoistic, meaning the character thinks people of other groups, ethnic, etc., are not as good as their own. This is what the Indian player, who is playing an Indian character, went for. So he's turning the British colonial ideology on its head. I love this. We'll be able to make fun of colonial mindset, and the character is automatically on the offensive when it comes to ethnic clashes. To be fair, we've mostly skirted past the bulk of the issues that I was concerned about. It's hard to worry about idealistic class struggles when a werewolf is trying to eat your face.
The great equalizer.
Yeah.
Werewolves, yep. But eventually we will face it. I'm hoping I can make it as educational and informative as I was with my Weird War II game. I'm sure that had nothing to do with the fact that I'm a teacher. Keep up the awesome work. I listen to a lot of RPG actual plays, but this is the only game chat/advice show I've stuck with.
Oh, that's really sweet. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for all the inspiration. Okay, I do have a PS. I know this is a long letter, so maybe you can save this for later. What would you recommend as good actual play or advice RPG podcasts, besides Happy Jacks, obviously? Do you have favorites? Thanks again, Ken from Canada.
Okay. There isn't a specific question here, but any thoughts?
I do, but
I know, it's like I'm gonna be Queen Squirt Games.
Oh, that was not what I was even thinking about. I was gonna talk about the body of the thing.
Well, no, I mean the question was a thing. I am really glad that game went as well as it did. You supporting your players' choices is fantastic, and I would say when it comes to once again, it's all about having that groundwork that you're doing with the session 0, with lines and fails, with player check-ins to just make sure that when you do break up clashes and all of that stuff, that they stay comfortable. But it sounds like you're really in tune with that, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make one thing very clear, and I feel like I'm going to be such a hater about this. This is my haterade episode. If you're playing a Victorian fantasy, if you're playing a medieval fantasy, if you're playing a whatever historical period, I encourage everyone who is, first of all, to remember it is fantasy. So you seem to, and you've taken that route. You're like, play whatever you want to play. If you want to be a badass rich lady who can buy friends, fuck yeah, go for it. My caveat on that is, if you want to be like, but it's the period, it's misogynistic because they were all misogynistic in the Dark Ages, I encourage you to actually look up historical records of those periods of time. The Victorians were famous for going back into records and changing stuff to make it fit their worldview. And there is so much subversive history now that we have found about Vikings, about the Dark Ages, about medieval ages, about non-Europe around those times. The Ottoman Empire during when the Europeans were going through the Dark Ages is amazing. And Victorian England is the same way. Famously, people went back and adjusted Victoria's. I'm getting excited and watching Jason turn down my mic.
You go off.
It was people went through Victoria's diaries and cleaned them up because she was a dirty little fucker. Like, you should, like, I just want to say this to anyone who is worried about inviting people of color or people who are non-mask into games that are historical. Like, the world is far less bigoted than you think it was. And so if you want to be educational about it, that's the education I think people should be looking into, is not, well, you know, everyone should be buttoned up in the Victorians. It's like, man, do you know the can-can was done without underpants?
Mm-hmm.
Like, seriously, there's so much of history that is, like, much more interesting than the base level, like, Victorian prudism, like, and yes, like, I think it's awesome that your guy is playing, like this reverse colonial. Like,
Sure.
That's so much fun, and it's great that you're supporting that. And but it's like also amusing to me because, I mean, it's not unrealistic. Like, it's not unrealistic to today's, like, South Asian societies. Like, there are people who feel like that. That once again, like, especially with history, we tend to think of people as a monolith. We tend to think of people, like, in these really broad strokes. And just remember that there are so many more shades, and there's so many more types of people, and there's so many more attitudes than we ever actually give them credit for, because it's history and we've become so progressive. Whereas, like, what a lot of times happens is, like, we just don't learn any of the progressive history of the past.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not historical or whatever. Or, yeah, it's all been said.
Yeah, that's my one like little caveat. If you want recommendations for other podcasts and games, I'm gonna give it to everyone else before I go off again.
I mean, I said, like, you can listen to both Clara and myself on Queen's Court Games.
Oh.
Clara in the most award-winning actual play in the world from last year, the All Night Society, which is a Vampire the Masquerade game.
True, is that the metric? I have no
Y'all won the
idea.
most awards.
Yeah, probably.
And so it's or at least Aaron's never corrected me when I've said it before. We have a game, Southeast Asian setting, space, mech, opera, all the drama, wonderful. You can watch Claire and I Fall in Love again. And, called Mekong, that is going on now. 12-Sided Stories is a podcast-only actual play. Highly edited, so your episodes are like around 45 minutes to an hour. Very great, like, scored, sound effects, all of that stuff. It is a very well-produced podcast in a variety of systems. But plays a lot, like, I think the most ongoing thing that you can follow through is the Otherworld series there, where started with Otherworld London, Otherworld Seattle, Otherworld Hollywood. Like, it's really fun to follow all these different, like, basically like a Call of Cthulhu through the ages.
Yeah. Another one that is coming soon that you should look up johnangie.card.co. and he's about to release a YouTube series that is him giving advice. I think it's called Dungeoneer Show, but I might be misremembering. So go to the card. But
Definitely
he
Dungeoneer
is,
in the name.
yeah, he is a video editor, a filmmaker, and so it's him with these well-edited, really good like commentary and advice and all that. So if you're looking for other types of advice shows, I think that's going to be really good. I had a little sneak peek of one of the episodes. I can't wait to see the whole thing. So I hope they don't suck, because I've now recommended this, and this will be recorded for the ages. But I believe in John, so I think. Why did I call him John? That's so weird.
Yeah,
Engie.
Yeah, Engie.
I don't know why I said that.
Honestly, I don't really listen to a whole lot of podcasts or advice shows besides Happy Jack stuff. I just don't have a whole lot of time because I'm preparing for like 8 D&D campaigns a week.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and then I kind of have to hammer a life in there somewhere. So I've been listening to Mekong. Mekong is amazing.
Thank you.
It really is.
I love it. It's incredible.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
go onto the table again, aren't I?
No, don't. Please don't. Let everybody see your wonderful faces, please. But really beyond that, that takes care of me for my commute. And I do not have time for anything else, unfortunately. So,
If you're looking for video APs, and I don't know if they get released as podcasts, is it Power Play that Sam?
Oh yeah. Althaven is what's Beacons on? I think it's Althaven. They're doing a bunch of good stuff too. Sam DeLev.
Queen's Court just released their Crown Grant, which is we paid for the entry fees. Aaron's going to correct me if I'm wrong about this. We paid for their entry fees for several web festivals throughout the circuit. So I have a shit ton of recommendations because I just had to watch 32 actual plays of people who submitted to recommend them. But we gave our now I'm gonna get this wrong, but we gave grants to several, including Clear Skies Perseverance, which is another Sam DeLev property show. Yep. That's a Star Trek game. I do know they make the Star Wars Roll20, by the way. That is a reference to someone said I didn't know in the thing, in the chat. So Clear Skies Perseverance is an actual play that's Star Trek themed, which is very cool. I loved their graphic design. So like I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Rerol is a Argentinian actual play that's filmed in studio.
What is it called?
Rerol, R-E-R-O-L. Argentinian players, LGBTQ. They're playing D&D. Yes. And it's filmed in studio, and they have it's lovingly subtitled. It's very good. And it's really fun. We gave can I
throw a Transplaner in?
Yeah.
Oh my
God.
Translator's so good.
Kai's
How did we not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna Godkiller Oblivion. We gave was one of ours. I'm
Okay, so
okay. Buddha's looking
I pulled
it
it
up
up. It's so many names.
It was many. I got some.
Okay, Super Journey Dudes did Blink's Place Blues.
Super Journey Dudes, Blink's Place Blues.
Godkiller Oblivion.
Yes.
Arcane Core Aftermath. Reroll. Anywhere But Now, which is a Doctor Who TTRPG actual play podcast, so that one's definitely a podcast. And Clear Skies Perseverance.
Yes.
Yeah. Clear Skies Perseverance. Yeah.
Those are the ones we gave Crown Grants to. But like, I also watched a ton from there. I know Dum Dums and Dragons. There it is. Was one that also got accepted into a couple web fests, and they're an audio podcast as well, so it have visual elements, and they are very tightly edited and well done as well, and they're fun. I don't find that there are many advice show.
Yeah, I haven't found that many either. And I'm always curious to see what other people are doing, like formats and whatever. Like, it's really cool. But
I'll be honest, like advice shows aren't really my.
I actually prefer them.
Outside of this one.
And
I don't listen to a bunch of advice shows.
there's really not a lot. There's
Yeah.
a lot of people talking about D&D.
Yeah.
How to play and how to run D&D. Not
Yeah.
a whole lot of
I
other ones out there.
I feel like I'm like, have you been to like a Michelin star restaurant? They're pretty good. Dimension Dropout has Brennan Lee Mulligan's advice show, the Adventuring Party or Adventuring Academy, and it's excellent. Heck, they have
Yeah, I
Santa
mean,
levels
Brendan
on
Lee
it.
Mogul. What are you gonna
Yeah.
do? Like,
They do interviews with with other creators, and it's important. Like, I think it's worth listening to how other creators run their games. So
Yeah, absolutely.
and thank you, Pooja, for volunteering to read Mailbag 3.
Rude.
You have brought this on yourself.
if you talk a lot in class, you don't have to do the homework.
No. This one is targeted.
Talked so much.
This is
But this
targeted.
is Mailbag 3 titled Just Because Jason is Here. I was
So
just
clearly, I can't
splash
read it.
damage.
Yes.
I'm just splash damage from this mailbag. Hello, Happy Jacks peeps. Pinnacles is the one RPG that I never knew I needed. I've been watching Pinnacles and love the directions the story has gone. The plot reminds me of what I did when I first watched the movie, The One. Have
Yes.
you watched the movie The One? Does The One exist in the Pinnacles universe? Which the answer to that is yes.
Yes.
Yes, it does. I was in the U.S. Army and GMing a couple of Palladium games. I was new to GMing and loved the game setting, Rifts, so of course I made my own stuff for it.
This is what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. For this particular one, I had a percentage chart that I could roll on every time one of the alternate versions of the character died.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I think it started with an ability score point, some skill percentage, an HP, and SDC point. When there were like 10 or less of you, you might suddenly gain magic or psychic powers. Because the setting was already the center of a multiverse with no alternate universes built in, there was no way to implement it. I may not still have the paper sitting around in my old RPG binder, but have any of you gotten so involved with a movie or some form of media that you create a tool that you never use in order to make it happen in your game? Mike, who is Mist Extreme on the Discord. P.S. Drink your beverage of choice.
Cheers. I actually have a very specific example for this. It may shock you to learn.
Can't imagine.
When we started playing Pinnacles, I had a 1 through 10 chart of what was going to happen when you went between worlds, right? Like there was some stuff that could happen. And I used it, I think, once.
I did end up over the Green Lake at one point.
Yeah. Maybe it was twice. Anyway, I used it a couple times, and then it wasn't fun. So I just have never used it again. But yes, I have done this.
I'm a huge chaos magic sorcerer. I'm a wild magic sorcerer person, so I love a good table of random effects.
Yeah. I do too.
It was like, because of where it ended up sitting in the game, like, we were always either teleporting to another universe because we needed to go do something urgent over there, or we were trying to come home from something. And so, like, the timing on it, just because we weren't, like, just randomly going back and forth, it was like, here is this time when you are completely depleted because you have fought a big thing and, like, gone through a bunch of stuff and you are just trying to get home.
Mm-hmm.
You might end up God only knows where. It was just doesn't feel great. Me ending up in front, like, over Green Lake was funny.
Yeah.
And then the Kraken lady ending up on Scintillation was also funny.
Yeah, that was fun. But ultimately, I barely ever used it. It was just sort of a goofy, fun thing that I was realizing was, you know, when you're watching a movie or something like that, it's not random. They scripted something to feel kind of random, or like the characters didn't expect what happened. That doesn't mean it was random, and it doesn't mean like a room of people didn't all agree exactly what would happen thing after thing. So there were components of that, and like as much as I love a wild magic sorcerer table, the rest of the table does not.
You're right, but
You're right.
That's yeah. I
You're
don't know.
right. You're totally
Any
right.
other movie show artifacts that we brought into a game?
I sort of have something tangentially related. Going back to like movies and media influencing campaigns and stories, actually, I remember now. I ended up writing another D&D module that was very influenced by the Star Trek episode The Inner Light, and by the Magicians episode A Life in a Day, where basically, if none of you have heard of The Inner Light, it's the episode where Captain Jean-Luc Picard gets zapped by a satellite and lives an entire whole lifetime in the span of like an hour.
Oh.
The
Because-
flute episode.
Oh, wait, what was that?
It's the flute.
The flute
episode.
episode,
Yes.
exactly.
Oh god,
Because there's this, and I mean, spoilers for an episode of the series that's however many decades old now.
It's fine.
But basically, there's a dying alien society. They put all of their knowledge and life experiences into this one satellite, in the hopes that it would find somebody else and transmit that knowledge so that the society wouldn't be forgotten.
Oh.
And so in that adventure, an entire D&D party gets shunted into this little world, and they have to carve out a life there. And then it fast forwards 30 years where, all of a sudden the reason why they got shunted into that world comes up, and they actually have to decide, what do we want to do with this world that we created around us? Do we want to just destroy it? Do we want to leave? Do we want to stay in here and be part of, because I've gotten attached to the 30 years that I've lived here? That's one of those adventures that I never got to play test personally. I just had to take feedback and like write and incorporate and stuff like that. But by the time I'd gotten to release it, I heard players were like crying because of the stories they built within there. And they were having like these crises as to, do I really want to play this character that I've played through level 4 now? Do I really want to leave them behind in this world and start up a new one? Because I don't want them to leave this imaginary wife that they've created. And I've had players who did that. Or I've heard of stories of players who've done
That's
that.
incredible.
That's heartbreaking.
So that's one way to kind of incorporate it. It's not a tool that I haven't used, but it's something that, that kind of does facilitate a story. Another thing that I did for that particular game is that because they're living in this imaginary world, when it comes time to fight the big bad, they get a reality-altering kind of crystal that's got a series of points, and with each point you can like make platforms appear, you can cause water to rise, you can make a wall of water. There's just a bunch of these weird effects that you can do, right? And again, that comes from Dark City. I don't know if any of you haven't seen it. Again, spoilers for a 20-year-old movie or however old it is. But in that movie, one character realizes that he has the ability to warp reality around him. And so that's another tool. I love that idea. I didn't get to incorporate it in the Dark City module that I wrote just because it wasn't within the brief. So I incorporated it into this one. And again, players seem to really enjoy it and seem to work really, really well. So there's that. Yeah.
Success stories.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. Now I'm so sad. I'm notorious for stealing stuff from books that I like because I've never had an original thought in my life. And Sabriel's bells have showed up in games I've run, mostly because I like making props. So if I put it in a game I'm running, then I have an excuse to make the thing. It works out for me. Sabriel's bells have showed up in games, also because I think they're rad to look at. If the concept of road witches is from a Sean and McGuire book, but I spun off a lot of that lore to fit some stuff that I wanted to do with it. Trying to think of like weird. There's an old series that I'm pretty sure no one else read called Deltora Quest, and I've made
that one.
It's super not. It's very child fantasy. But there's a bunch of props from there that have showed up in games I've run, including like the belt of Deltora and like the little water absorbing rocks. It's again so niche, so tiny, so niche things, and I like hiding them partially because for example, like if you are a person who likes Sabriel, if you're like, oh, there's a rack of bells that this necromancer uses, someone throws the table over like, I know that thing, and it's fun. I like doing that for people. And also, I cannot emphasize enough how much I like having the props that I have to then make. Because, oh no, it's in the game. I have to make it. Mm-hmm.
I did just think of one last example, for me at least. My whole next game is around the mashed up idea of like Fallout power armor and Tony Stark's armor, and like, what if your armor was fully a person, and that was the two, like, one of you is the human and one of you is the armor, and you have to like that's my whole next game. So yes, I was influenced by something to put something in a game, but at first I had to make the game first.
Right, yeah.
And so that's the next thing that's going to be coming out from me. But yeah.
I am so like for Mekong for Rupia, for about half the season, if you can track like different lines of Rupia's dialogue that are specifically pulled from old like noir movies. And also like that's beyond all the Fast and Furious references that we all made. But like, so I got so enamored with the idea of like old Bollywood movies, old old noirs from like the golden age of film here. So I tracked a bunch of like different dialogue that would fit into the settings that we were going into in those sessions, to have quotes, like not the most famous quote, but like the next most famous quote to put in as lines of her dialogue. And then also like we had a bunch of like different movie titles that we just twisted to fit into the universe.
Lankaska Drift is my favorite, but I could not pronounce.
Great.
And so in terms of like a mechanic, no, but it was definitely a thing that like there were so many times, because I was just so enamored of all these old movies that I had watched, like all of this stuff, and like putting all of that into this character who is completely like cinema and stage obsessed. But all of it, with the exception of like the Fast and the Furious, were Golden Age and Silver Age movies from Hollywood and Bollywood.
That's so good. I was gonna say, Bloodied Porcelain just called me out in the chat, and this is also true. Anytime there's an urban fantasy character I play, it is wish fulfillment inspired by a movie, show, or book. I'm currently playing a mage in my Mage the Ascension LARP that is Harry Dresden meets Bridget Jones. And that is exactly how you expect it to go. But yeah, it's less material. I feel like I play less. Also, Pooja heckin' called me out once because I asked for it, and then I felt bad about it, where I asked what my archetype was, and she's like, "You play a YA protagonist in every game you ever play." And she's right. They're right.
You know what? Like, in return, Clara called me out.
Yeah.
And it's fine. Every time I play my my little angry goblin who just wants fucking love, I think
need love.
You know what? You're right.
And I should say it.
Just need love.
Any other add-ins? Oh,
You know, one last thing. I was you know, I did a freelance job writing like an introductory level D&D module for an anime con, and so I basically turned Pokemon into D&D. You know, complete with like cards.
Oh, great.
And like call outs to the show. So I ended up developing this little mini subset card game using D&D mechanics, but where players could like lay a card down and battle each other and stuff like that.
And then they stole that for Magic. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh!
A lot of things, a lot of influence in that one.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that Jay invented Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, yeah, way back when. I'm still angry at was it Richard Garfield?
Yeah, right.
Edging me out.
What a hack.
Good lord, that Richard guy.
Oh, I also, because they're in the chat, I also should say for podcast recommendations, Hallowed Haven Studios, I'm gonna be on 2 of their projects coming up, so I have to call them out now. But no, Jay invented Magic the Gathering. You heard it here.
You heard it here first. Yeah. Big reveal this Happy Jack's advice show.
Like,
He was gonna be so
burying the
mad.
lead.
All right. Anything else? Thank you for joining us for season 33, episode 13 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. Please support our amazing indie designer of the month, Logan Timmons, at breathingstories.itch.io. And thank you to our chat mod, James V, and all of our chat mods, and our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent. happyjacks.org/Patreon is the place to join in on that. There's lots of levels, and if you join at the D8 level, we have these nerding out recordings that we do where we just get in. It's not live stream. It's just purely for the Patreon, and we talk about shit that like blows our lids back. You know, like the stuff that you're excited about, and you know what? They're really fucking good.
It's just rants. It's just oops all rants.
And if you join at like the D20 level, maybe you can convince Kimmy to just have a session where Clara and I talk about all the books that we love.
Yeah.
There's the same
Oh, a
person.
book club, yes, for
Yes,
sure.
D20 just does screaming about books.
So, once again, that's happyjacksrpg/Patreon. I'm Jason.
I'm Clara.
I'm Jay.
I'm Buja.
We'll see you next time.
Bye. What song do you leave us with?
We don't have a song this week. Sorry, everybody.
Farts. Okay. well,
Or it's whatever song was on last week. Enjoy.
Oh,
Enjoy.
There you go.
Come on.
Bye.